All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stu and the Nunn, episode 327. Excuse me. Nunn was going to be with me tonight, but had a prior engagement. Could not make it. But, of course, our ever faithful, always there, very highly paid, Rob, the unpaid producer, as you can see, is with me tonight. It's been a while since Rob's been on. He's in the background all the time, and he is handling, one, keeping us straight on facts, but two, also just working the socials and all that kind of stuff. So, want to thank you, Rob, for coming on and being with me tonight.
Absolutely, sir. How have you been?
Good. It's been busy. A lot of things going on. Was able, we as I finally, after a couple week hiatus, was able to put a great show on last week with Wolf and Uncle Jimbo, and man, really was a phenomenal show. Jimbo's just so smart. I don't know how such a ugly grunt can be such a smart dude, but man, he's a shade tree lawyer if I ever saw. That dude knows a lot about what's going on in the Supreme Court and law and that kind of stuff, which just humbles me all the time.
Well, I
But
mean, as usual, even when you take a day off, the news doesn't, right? I mean, the news just keeps going and going and going, and this current administration is the one that we thought Trump was gonna, be a constant. This is, with this administration, it never stops. There's something new every day.
yeah, yeah. And it is remember we used to talk about that back in the Trump days, how he just, between his mean tweets and everything, he gave us all kind of stuff to talk about. We thought, Sleepy Joe was gonna provide us nothing, but man, he has not ceased to entertain and give us plenty to go with.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so, and obviously we just came off of a very, very, for the Biden administration, unorthodox and rare speaking to the nation. I think he gave about a 45-minute notice to the country that he was going to come on and do a nighttime announcement and talk, and he left the country hanging after this terrible report that came out, special counsel report today on the classified documents that he had, and where they really, really called into question his mental acuity and abilities. He just said, I got a special announcement. I'm going to talk to the country at 7:45. Obviously, we pushed the show back. I don't know what you were thinking. I was thinking, is he going to step aside? Like,
Well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. That
yeah,
was the report. That was in the report. My thing about that, and I have zero doubt that any defense for Biden would play that card. Anybody with, a good lawyer would play that card. Trump probably wouldn't play it just because his ego may get in the way.
yeah,
But the thing is, the case shouldn't be about what his current state is. The case should be about what the state he was in when he committed the act. And it's stated in there he knew he was taking these documents. So at the time, a 40 plus career, you were in the military, you know how much training we had to do on documentation and anything that was cleared and all of that training. You know what you can and can't take. He is a 40 plus year politician. He knew what he was taking he wasn't supposed to. And he knew storing it in a box in a garage behind his Corvette was wrong. And it should
Well, it's interesting,
be
right?
about that.
Because it's not just when he was vice president, right? There were documents that went back to when he's being a senator.
That's
So
yep.
not only, I mean, a vice president is going to have, he's on the inner circle. He's going to have access to all that stuff and everything, even though he does not have the ability to take it with him. You and I both know you go into a skiff. You can print things out in a skiff. It doesn't leave you unless you have the ability to be a courier and you have a locked bag to take it with and all that other kind of stuff. But you definitely can't take out boxes and boxes of stuff. But some of this stuff was from when he was a senator in his 70s. So obviously he was much more sharper back then. I mean, that was before he even did the 1984 crime bill, right? Which has put so many people in jail. He likes to forget about. But it goes all the way back to then. And it's interesting that when it came out, the first thing he opened with was comparing himself to Trump. I mean, he came out the gate. The last few days, it's all been about Trump,
Right.
and he came out with just comparing his case to Trump, with the case for that they're investigating him on classified stuff, and they're trying to compare. I think they're trying to say, well, he willingly turned it over. Ironically, 2 weeks before the special prosecutor Jack White was appointed, is when all of a sudden they realized that he had documents.
Mhm.
Right, the timing very suspicious, right? When it was like all these years he's had it, and then 2 weeks before they appoint a special prosecutor to investigate President Trump, and then raid his place and all stuff, they come out and say, "Oh, he's got some documents," and they found them all in the garage. They found them in the Penn Center, which is the ton of Chinese funding. They found them in his basement. They found them all over the place.
Yeah.
So he's had these documents the whole time, and like you said, they were he was in a much better state. Now, one thing that's interesting about this finding, what I've been getting all day, is they did not alleviate him or clear him of any wrongdoing, right? In
They
fact,
just said they're not going to charge him.
what they said, they're not. And when they said it, I immediately thought of Comey. Uh, excuse me. And someone mentioned it tonight on one of the shows. When Comey found the stuff on Hillary, he came out and said, we're not going to prosecute because we don't think any. He was second guessing or speculating what a jury would do. And when he came out and said, we're not going to press charges, we don't think a jury's going to
A
convict.
reasonable jury would not.
Right.
Would not
That same talking point was used tonight or today in that report. The report said, they're not going to bring it forward because they think a jury will find sympathy on him, being an old man who doesn't remember anything, and so they wouldn't be able to convict him.
Yeah.
That's crazy that that is now the bar by which they bring charges. It's when you have, it's one thing for a prosecutor, and I'm not a lawyer, don't try to play one, but I know a few things because I was a first sergeant, so I'll count that. But it's one thing to say, hey, we got all of our evidence together, and there's not enough evidence to either bring it to a grand jury to get a convict, like our star witness left or died, right? If they don't have enough evidence and they don't feel confident that they can bring charges and get a conviction, they won't bring charges, right? And they don't. I don't know many attorneys that will say, "Well, we hope we can." Right? Any law enforcement agency that's investigating, detectives, when they present their stuff to the prosecuting attorney, they come with a complete package, and then that prosecuting attorney decides whether they can bring this case and win it, not just bring it to trial. But there's no cases I know of in this country that the attorney looks and says, "Wow, we have the evidence; it's damning, but we don't think we think a jury's going to let them off anyways."
Yeah.
That does not happen anywhere.
That shouldn't. What you think the jury is going to do shouldn't matter. If you
Right.
have the evidence to bring the charges, bring the charges.
You should
That's
be confident in your case
yeah.
to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. So their thing is they cannot convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt because they think the jury's going to be sad for this lonely, sad old man who doesn't have any memory, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of the way he is now, or if he were to win in another 4 years, right? But
Now, now
but
could
that guy could be the commander in chief and deploy our
yeah,
military anywhere and make
right, yeah,
decisions. I
yeah.
mean, do they realize what they're saying?
I mean, does I was kind of thinking and going into the conspiracy theories part of it, and was wondering, is this in some sort of a attempt to get Trump to play his hand, right? Uh, did or will Trump say, "Oh, well, you can't convict me because you let Biden off because I'm a senile old man," and now they say, "Oh, well, you're a senile old man, you can't run. He's already in office. We're not going to remove him, but you can't run because you're a senile old man." I don't know. It just there is so much wrong with them not moving forward with that. Again, it shouldn't be about what his state today. It should be about what his state was when the act was committed. And if you're saying when the act was committed, he was not in any kind of state to do that, then how did you let him get to the to the White House?
In the first place. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
So
I'm trying to deal with some camera issues here. I don't know. I lost connection to my cameras. I
yeah,
don't know
all I
how.
see is GoPro.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to switch to my other one. Um, and see where that goes.
Okay.
But
Yep,
that's
I got you there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So all right, I'm gonna try to get back to the GoPro. I don't know what's happening with that, but anyways, yeah, it is just. Oh, there we go. Now we're back. Okay,
Yeah.
I
I
don't know
mean
what
that
happened.
would be like
Dang, and the
if
socials are trying to shut me down already. They're
I mean, if you had someone who was, let's just say, a Satan worshiper or whatever, when they committed an act, but then they converted to Christian, Christianity. Oh, well, now that he's a Christian, they're not going to convict him. So we don't think the jury would convict him. They would have pity. So it doesn't matter what he did before.
right.
We just don't think it just wouldn't fly. That excuse is just that. It's an excuse, and it wouldn't fly. So
Well, I
it
mean, to just sit there, excuse me, to sit there and say, for him to come out not only tonight, but today, and say they found no wrongdoing, they're not going to charge. No, that's not
that's
what
not
they
what they said.
said. You can
Yeah,
spin it that way. They found your wrongdoing. They just think that a jury won't come. And they literally played the Comey card. There must be something the FBI Department of Justice has is play the I don't think jury card if
right.
we don't want to bring charges. But I mean, this has got to give. I mean, obviously, they handed a big bow wrapped gift to the Trump campaign and to the entire GOP,
Yeah.
right? Because they're going to play this feeble old man, can't remember anything, couldn't remember the death of his son, couldn't remember when he was vice president, all this stuff. And it's interesting to see the back and forth.
Could
Of course, he came out after he spent the first couple minutes comparing himself to Trump and how he was different, and that's the reason why no charges were brought. And of course, he played the bow card, right? He played that, got choked up. How could I not remember when my son died and all that kind of stuff?
right.
And I was like, I knew he was going to play whatever. Once I realized he wasn't resigning, I knew he was going to probably do the whole, it was stressed out by the October 7th because I did these interviews the day after, whatever. But I did not see the bow card coming because there's no, Gold Star families around him.
Right.
Um, but I was surprised he came with that one. But I guess they're throwing everything at the wall they can see, hope something
Well,
sticks.
I mean, even his latest gaffe, which he's had many, where he told people he spoke to the president of France that died in 1996. I
Oh, but
mean,
wait, it gets better. The next day, he said he spoke to the president of Germany, who had died about January 6th, who had died 4 years prior.
yeah. I mean,
And then
that's
tonight in his speech, he referred to President Sisi as the president of Mexico
yeah,
and how he's gonna do something to President. I mean, like that was tonight during that speech,
yeah,
right? And there was one more right before that. I forget what it was, but there's been like four of those in like the last 4 days.
yep,
Um, one thing I heard earlier was someone said, wow, they're desperate if they're marching him out at night with no notice and then letting him letting answer questions. They've never done. I mean, they just don't do
yeah.
that with this. This is not that president.
I mean, he skated out of there pretty quick at the end.
It was
So
funny. He started to leave and then he came back, and I was like, oh my God, his communications team is freaking out right now because he was out the door turned around and walked back and answered more questions. And I was like, his press team was just like cringing,
Yeah.
screaming at him to please leave the stage, leave the podium. But I mean, he seemed kind of hyped up. I'm not saying anyone gave him anything, but he seemed to be very energetic. Maybe he threw a
Right.
monster down beforehand. I don't know.
Well, and it's probably past
You
his
know,
bedtime already. Um, but
yeah.
to the point about him, what, lying, blatantly lying to the public that no wrongdoing was found. I mean, this entire 2 weeks, the spin machine has been in full effect. I mean, Democrats blatantly lying about the border bill. If a bill has $60 billion in it for Ukraine and 20 billion in for the border, that's not a border bill. That's a Ukraine bill. So you can't spin that
Yeah.
any other way to anybody with more than one brain cell. So the spin machine is in full effect. And I as I
Well,
told
it's the
you
same thing
before, I
as
got
called.
my
What was the one bill they called it? It was they were claiming it had to do with the environment, right, and all that kind of stuff. And it
Green
was
New Deal.
just and then now, yeah, then it
Well,
came out had nothing to do with the environment. Right?
the Inflation Reduction
Oh, the
Act.
Inflation
First,
Reduction Act. That was it. Yeah, and then
create
they came out like,
inflation.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, create inflation and then act as if you give a shit, then pass something that, with the name like it's going to fix it and then profit. That's basically
it's
what this
it's what every one of those businesses that goes out of business does. Right before they sell off to the wholesaler that helps
yeah,
them go bankrupt, they jack all the prices up and they go, everything's 30% off. Yeah, the full retail price, which nothing in your store's ever been full retail. So now it's just back to its normal price.
and I understand there's negotiation, right? That's part of politics. But until we get back to single line item bills, the way it should be, the way it was designed to be, we're going to end up with more bullshit like this. The politics is going to continue. Washington is going to continue to do what Washington does until something changes, until something forces them to change. And we
Right.
can't keep packaging these bills and playing this back and forth in the media bullshit. There's got to be a fix. We have to be able to get back to governing the country the way it should be. Single line item bills. Let your votes show your constituents where you stand. If you don't support Israel and you vote no, and all your constituents do, they'll show you the door. And that's why they hide behind these bundled bills, because they can go back to their constituents and go, well, I didn't want to support Israel, but I had to because I wanted to support the border. They can play the shell game with their constituents and get away with it and hide behind the party and hide behind this bundled bill instead of showing their constituents exactly who they are.
I mean, kind of transition in this border. I mean, I mean, how bad is it that the whole country pretty much threw the BS flag that McConnell and even the one guy the guy from Oklahoma, I forget his name, themselves came out and said, "I'm not going to vote for it." Like, you're the ones that negotiated this and
Yeah,
wrote it, right?
yeah,
And the one analogy I heard to compare it was, this border bills went with the 5,000 per day, blah, blah, on average, all that kind of stuff, was pretty much like saying, "Hey, rather than let the shoplifters come into our store, we're just going to we're going to put $5,000 worth of stuff on the back loading dock and then go there. And then once they've stole all that, they're going to have to come around the front of the store and shoplift like they normally do." And
right.
they're like, that's what it was saying, right? We're going to let 5,000 in a day, 5,001 we're not going to let in. Okay, they're just going to go down a mile down the road and come through that way, right? Because this was 5,000 through ports of
Yeah.
entry,
Well,
right?
the
And
talking point.
all the videos we see aren't points of entry. They're coming through the wall, around the wall, over the wall.
Yeah.
Those aren't ports of entry.
Well, the talking points that I think Republicans continue to get wrong is, yes, remain in Mexico was part of the solution. Yes, building a wall was part of the solution. But you know what was also part of the solution? Donald Trump's strength when it came to immigration. He projected strength and said, "Don't come. We're going to ship your ass back." And Biden doesn't do any of that. He projects weakness, and it is an attraction. It's like flies
No,
to honey.
what he says is he just like saying don't, right?
Yeah,
Don't come, don't attack,
yeah,
don't shoot any more missiles at our people. Don't he's and he and his lackey that the cackler there said the same thing. He said don't.
yeah,
Okay, it's not really working that well because guess what? The Houthis are still shooting rockets all the time.
yeah,
And you and I both know whatever hits the news and makes the news circles is only 10% of what's really going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We both have lived it. We've been in those news generating events where the stuff coming back here is just a tip of
Right.
the iceberg of what's really happening. So when we hear about them shooting rockets and doing this and drone attacks, I mean, they couldn't hide 3 soldiers getting killed by a drone. But when you see 160 something attacks, there's been a lot of soldiers wounded. There's been a lot of things that
Sure.
have been
Yeah.
destroyed, government equipment and stuff, but they don't talk about it, right? They just keep racking up the
Right.
number. But when you got 3 getting killed, then they go, "Oh, okay, we got to kind of fess up on that one." Right?
Well, yeah, because I mean, the families would eventually start asking questions, right?
Right.
I haven't heard from my son or daughter in the last year and a half. Where are they at? Oh,
Exactly.
sorry. Yeah. But his weakness is, like I said, it's like flies to honey.
Yeah.
And until again, if you were to put Trump in there or anybody else who's going to project a strength, that is a deterrent. Just like the old saying of carry a big stick.
Right.
Speak softly and carry a big stick. Trump carried that big stick. Like him or not, he carried the big stick, and that was a huge deterrent. People didn't make the trek because they at least thought when they got here they weren't going to get in. So
Well, you know what? Yeah, and one thing, I heard tonight was to kind of go back on Biden and his mental state real quick, is that we because we have so limited access to him, we only see when he walks out in front of cameras. And you just brought up a couple of the gaffes around 4 of the last 4 days that we've seen. One of the comments made after his speech tonight, I was watching, trying to get ready for the show, was how much is going on behind the scenes we don't see, because we only see the 5% of the time when when he walks to the helicopter or they have somebody and he comes out and makes speeches and we see him turn and try to shake a hand that isn't there. We see him refer to dead people. We see him, say all this stuff, claim you just saw someone that wasn't even in the room, all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
And that's only for the minimal amount of time we get to see him. What's happening every day in the halls and the offices of the White House? What's not being on the press, how is he acting and that kind of stuff? And that's when it was said, I was kind of thinking, yeah, look how many gaffes and mistakes we see this week have been almost every single time he's been in front of the camera. Man,
well,
how there's a lot more behind that.
I mean, even when you go back to his campaign, where he campaigned from the basement, you didn't see him out. I've joked about
Right.
it before, but it's almost really it's almost a reality where we have a virtual president, right? We don't have a real body sitting in that chair because somebody else is pulling the strings. We get to see the very little bit that the cameras, that they can't block, but we almost have a virtual reality president is what we have.
So
So
what that report did today is it kind of peeled the excuse me, it pulled the curtain back a little bit.
yeah,
Because what we saw was his lack of mental ability during a 5-hour interview over 2 days, not 5 hours in 1 day,
yeah.
right? Over 2 days. Um, his inability to remember things and not even get close in the year that things
He couldn't
happened.
even
Like,
remember when he was vice president.
could not
And
even remember when
that,
he's vice
yeah,
president. And that was for 8 years,
yeah.
right? So, um, it's so we kind of see that it wasn't the scripted kind of throw him a couple monster energies and put him out in front of the camera for 5 minutes. It was an interview in his office or in an office, I guess, uh, over 2 days, and how many things that this special prosecutor noted his inability to, and we're still trying to get through all the stuff. It's
Right.
330 something pages. His inability to remember things, his inability to put time frames and stuff, all this kind of stuff. I mean, he's kind of showing a little bit, like I talked about, what's really going on behind the scenes. And that should scare the living hell out of everyone, right? Because either the crazy old guy from down the street is walking around with his finger on the button, or someone that people that nobody in this country elected or know who they are the ones with the finger on the button,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And calling the shots.
Well, how
Um,
many questions? I mean, you probably sat for depositions and stuff like that before. I mean, how many questions were asked that somebody stepped in and said you can't ask that? This is the president, that's
right,
classified. You can't. We don't even know those. So there's probably a
right.
litany of questions that he couldn't answer that they wouldn't even
Or his
let him
people
ask the
wouldn't allow.
questions.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we got, again, we got the 10% of, that like the old iceberg picture where you get to see a
right.
little bit of the top and you don't even see everything
So,
that's underneath.
So what do you think? Do you think this is going to sway some of the independents? Do you think this is going to sway some people that were on the fence? when this report continues to just it's going to continue to gurgitate this stuff out, right? As people get through it. And you think it's gonna? I think it will. I think
Oh
it's
yeah,
gonna.
yeah. Well, I mean that's the rub, right? I mean that's the it's those people in the middle. The people on the far left are going to vote for Biden no matter what. Biden could
I
die
don't know, man.
tomorrow.
I think some are gonna. I think some are either not gonna. There's gonna be like, I don't want to be part of this, like they did with Hillary, right?
Yeah.
The big reason why Trump won. One big reason is a lot of people hated Hillary so much they were like, I'm just not. No one's gonna blame me, right? I don't like either one. I'm not voting for her, and I don't want him. And
But
it's like
that's also the
I can
same way Biden won, right? Was they turned Trump into such a villain that people
right,
hated him. Like I was watching something earlier with Matt Taibbi and one of the Fox guys, and Taibbi even said he goes, I can't stand the guy. He goes, I didn't vote for him, but what I'm seeing that they did to him, I don't condone either. You know,
right,
but I mean, I think the far leftists, and I saw someone on Twitter earlier today that they even made a comment that well, even though he's here, he's not Trump, and I'm still going to vote for him. You know, and you do have some of those on the right that
right.
even though they hate Biden, they still won't vote for Trump. And that's where Nikki Haley gets the 30% of to
And
nowhere.
look, she's not going to make it. I mean, she's probably not going to make it back to South Carolina, and she's not going to be the nominee unless something really, really drastic happens. And I don't see how she is. There's just there's a lot of folks against her. But it, I think the people it's always comes down to the independents, right? The 13 or 17% of the independents are what sway. And I mean, I'm watching enough of these on the street interviews, and we're seeing the numbers change so drastically in the female, Hispanic, African American votes and all that kind of stuff that I mean, I think the Dems are really, really worried that those guaranteed voters they always counted on, I think aren't going to be there.
Yeah,
But I think this is going to do a lot of damage because honestly, okay, you didn't find him guilty. One, you're going to open up for the case against Trump to be thrown out or be
right,
disregarded. But more so, the things that you said about this guy that he couldn't even essentially stand trial, but he can be the president and do it for another 4 years.
right.
Yeah, I mean, and no one wants to come. I mean, this is straight up 25th Amendment stuff. If there ever
Oh, yeah.
was, this is 25th Amendment. But the only reason it's not because they hate Kamala even more.
Oh yeah. I mean, she couldn't even she couldn't even win the nomination for her own party and then blamed racism.
She was the first one out. Oh, there was like
Yeah.
17
That
of
was,
them. She was the first one
so
to
you
drop.
basically you just called your own constituents racist because you
Yes,
couldn't even win your own party.
and
So,
misogynist. It was because
yeah.
she was
Yeah.
female and black, and she's not. Anyways.
Well,
Um,
the Trump thing, if and I'll send you the link to it later. The Will Kane Matt Taibbi article, they go into a couple of things that are very scary, and one of those things is um, there are certain groups of people that hate Trump so bad that there is nothing that is off limits for them to do to make sure he doesn't get back into office. And these are some very powerful people, and that should scare everybody that there is a group of people so hell bent on keeping this gentleman out of office that there is nothing off limits, and that includes destroying our democracy to do so. That is not the will of the people. That is not what our constitutional republic is about. And these unelected bureaucrats that are going to these lengths, I mean, looking at it from that point, keeping him off the ballot, assassination is not out of the question for these people. And it's real scary. That is a scary thought that they would assassinate someone to keep them away from the American voter.
yeah, it is so that case went today in front of um in the hell. Oh, okay, my video lost for a second. So did yours. But the Colorado took them off the ballot. There's about 12 other states that are thinking about it. including Hawaii, who did something else
Yeah.
we'll talk about in a little bit. But you know, so there are other country based on how the Constitution says. Um, they're just trying to remove him and take away that choice from the people, right? They're trying to
Yeah.
remove him from the ballot and take him away. They're so worried about it. That's like their last straw. Well, they can't vote for him if he's not. Well, they could. They could write him in. That's how Joe won South Carolina, right? They wrote him in. But they can't even they can't even allow the American people to make a decision when they want to remove the American people's ability to make their decision on who they want to be president. That is a direct on, right? That is if that isn't socialism and communism at its best.
Wow.
That's how Kim Jong-un gets elected. That's how Putin gets elected. There's one dude on the ballot, right? And that's how dictators stay in charge. That's
Well,
essentially
if
what
you've
they're trying to
listened to
do because they're so
if
worried
you've
about it.
listened to any of the SCOTUS hearings that they have on removing him from the ballot, you get audio, you don't get video, right? But there's a lot of people
Yeah,
thinking that may be a 9-0 vote, that no, you can't do this. And my thought on that was, even SCOTUS understands that if you allow a state to do something like that, then there is nothing that states are not capable of doing. Then you would have Texas and Florida and several others removing Biden from the ballot. You would have, you know, you already have Hawaii saying that the Second Amendment doesn't apply to Hawaiians. I mean, this is utterly ridiculous.
yeah.
Did I lose you? Oh, okay. Your video froze.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me? Yeah,
I can hear you.
my video's frozen.
Yeah. So, yeah, I
Okay,
think
yeah,
I think
it's probably going to bounce me out in a little bit.
okay,
This has happened a couple
okay.
times.
I think even the liberal ju
Yeah, so if it does, you'll stay on. I'll
okay,
jump
I
back
think
in.
even the liberal justices realize that if they allow that to happen, that's one step closer to, civil unrest. And they'll probably use their heads more so than anything else. Allowing who's someone who's never even been charged with insurrection to be removed from the state ballot in a presidential election sets a very, very bad precedent, and then would allow states like Texas and Florida and any other strongly conservative states to then remove any candidate they wanted to going forward, and just daring somebody to challenge them in the courts. Say, there's precedent. You allowed Trump to get removed. Now, Texas and Florida will never, ever have a Democrat president or Democrat nominee on our ballots because we don't think that they can protect the borders. We don't think that they're going to do the jobs that we think that they're supposed to do. Because again, he's never been charged, he's never been convicted. They simply think he
Right.
committed insurrection. All Abbott has to do is say, I think Biden is derelict in his duty and not protecting the country, and therefore I'm removing him from the ballot.
Yeah, I mean, when every time they play this card, it always comes back and bites them. And the Supreme Court obviously took this case on very quickly. It moved to the top because obviously it's in an election year. There's been speculation since the day that Colorado brought this forward that it would probably be a 9-0 ruling against them. I watched a little bit of it today, or listened, like you said, you can listen to it, a little bit of it today. Seen a lot of headlines after that. Many think that just the way the questions they asked and the things they said across both sides, across justices that were nominated by whoever. I won't say both sides because they should not be on one side or the other, but across all 9 justices, the questions they asked and the things that were said is making many, I guess, observers think that they're gonna shoot Colorado down, and
Yeah,
they almost have to because yeah, you're opening it up for states to make this decision, and you are affecting the national election process, which is set forth in the Constitution.
yeah, yeah. And not based on charges,
Right.
based on
Not
what
that
you think.
right. Not on anything that's said. Now, one thing that's interesting, I don't know, I'm not, again, not a lawyer, not a legal scholar, but let's say they don't press these charges on Biden, but the election happens, Trump gets in office, all of his people get in the office. Can they reopen or do another investigation on Biden and then bring charges? Because you can't convict it. You can't bring charges up on a sitting president. He'll no longer be sitting president. Could a new Department of Justice go back and look at it and say, we need to relook at this case? Oh, guess what? We think there is enough evidence for
Yeah.
his classified docs, and we're going to take him to trial. I
Well, they
mean,
just ruled against Trump having, complete immunity, right? And that was one
right,
of the recent rulings as well. And even that one I think is a little bit dangerous because now what you can do is, and that Biden droned a U.S. citizen and didn't give them, their day in court. And granted, the U.S. citizen was considered a terrorist and was living in a foreign
right,
country, but they still had U.S. citizenship, and you didn't give them their legal right.
right.
And
Their due
so
process.
yeah, so does that mean we can go back and charge Obama with droning a US citizen? And I think it was 2. I think he droned 2 US citizens. And we were not at war. We were, Congress had not declared war anywhere. And so, I mean, that definitely opens it up to, if Trump were to get in office, say, "Hey, I think you need to go charge Obama with droning a US citizen and robbing them of their Miranda rights."
Yeah, they are uh they're really um setting bad precedents in the fact because we know if Trump does get back in the office, I mean, I talked about this thing last week or a few couple shows ago. He's not draining the swamp. He's lighting that thing on fire like it's full of food gas. I mean, he is he's got nothing to lose. He's the second of 2 terms, and he is going to he does not forget. And I mean, he'll burn everyone down. And
And
I
that's
think
that's why they're fighting so hard to not let him. And, I again, it's a dangerous time. I worry that, something's gonna happen. And, and then they pull Biden and then we end up with Nikki Haley, right? There is zero reason for Nikki Haley to stay in this race. She's not going to win. When she loses to anybody but these candidates, no one else, she has zero chance of making the nomination. So why is she staying in? Is she just, uh, trying to get more money out of the American people? I mean, she get more money out of businesses. There is zero reason for her to stay in this race. None. She has zero chance. So
right. She doesn't. I mean, she's putting up a good fight. I guess she's gonna say I'm not a quitter. But I mean, there's no way that she's gonna outdo him in delegates and everything else. And
mhm.
look, the honest truth is every time they brought charges against him, his numbers continue to go up.
Well,
We said this during all the debates when there were many people for the Republican. It was like all those debates that Trump wasn't going to was just people competing for second place.
right. Well, here's
That's
the
all.
guy. I mean, he's what, 77, so in his late 70s. So you're telling me someone who 50, 60 plus years of their life committed zero crimes, and then all of a sudden he committed 91 felonies? Are you kidding
Right.
me? That's what you're telling me. I mean, it's absurd. And
They're
the
throwing. I mean, the two impeachment things, the Russia, everything. They're really just throwing everything they can. I mean, they are trying to find any crack in the armor they can, or they're just trying and hoping they can make a crack, right?
yeah,
And hope that you throw enough you throw enough of the bullets in the air, you're eventually going to hit somebody. And I think that's what they're trying to do. And when they fall flat, they just forget about it. The news cycle shuffles it off, right? That he wasn't guilty of this or he didn't have that or whatever. So now it's getting states to remove him
yeah.
because they know they can't get people to not vote for him. The
Well,
polls are just too overwhelmed.
here's the thing. Presidents get a max of 8 years, period. Yes, you can get some things done in 8 years. And yes, he did not get nearly what he should have gotten done in the first 4 years. But I mentioned this to you
But he
before.
got a lot done.
Had they simply left him the F alone, had they simply not created the lies and bullshit and put the country through 4 years of bullshit because some, I'm not going to use the word, didn't get her turn, um, he would have ridden off into the sunset and been happy had
He
they
probably would have done
not
he, would have done-
done
he
that.
probably would have done four. He probably would have done four.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
so he could chalk it up, and then especially if he had someone good he knows would come in the next one, he probably would
yeah,
just enjoyed the rest of his life. But now they made it personal,
they
and
did.
he's coming back with a vengeance.
They
I mean, he didn't have to run the first one.
Democrats Democrats are responsible for Trump,
Yep.
100%, and responsible for where we're at right now, and
Well, the
responsible
reality
for
is I've talked about a number of times, Democrats and established Republicans um, are responsible for Trump and are almost responsible for Bernie, because pretty much when Obama came, they gave Obama a chance because they were sick and tired of the established old white guy
Mhm,
politicians. And Obama was an almost not nobody knew him, young, or what about Biden called him a young, smart sounding, articulate black guy, whatever he
yeah,
said. I forgot, some very terrible racist.
mhm,
Um, and everyone's like, well, he's been a community organizer. He's a brand new senator, but he's young. Let's give him a chance, right? And they gave him a chance, and then they gave him a chance for another 4 years, and then
yeah,
they realized, well, that didn't work. And what the politicians, both left and right, failed to recognize in this country was that he was the wake up call to all of them. Hey, the American people are telling you they're tired of the established, long, old school Republicans and Democrats. It's the reason why Biden ran twice before and could not win, right? Presidency, bounced out way out early too. Um, that he ran against Obama, and Obama beat him and then picked him up as a VP. That
right.
was the American people, the American voters saying, we're sick and tired of you throwing the same old white dude. So what does the Republicans do? Overthrow McCain up there. Oh, good move.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and then so that happened. And then the election happened in 2016. And Bernie, had it not been for the DNC sabotaging him, would have been the Democratic choice. He would have been the Democratic Party person going up for the presidency. It went all the way to DC, which was the last state before they had enough to make Hillary have enough delegates. That's never
right,
happened.
yeah.
And the only reason why Trump did so good, how does a billionaire who has his own private jet and has all these towers and buildings, how does the blue collar American people align and associate with him? There's nothing in common, right?
Right.
But because he wasn't an established politician, because he did something that no one has done since George Washington, the first president since George Washington that literally did not come out of politics to become president. I mean, everyone else has been grown and raised in politics. Um, and he won the presidency. Why? Because he was going against Hillary, and they were like, no, she's one of them. She's always been one of them. This dude really is not a politician, and that's what we want.
Well,
That's why
Dave,
Bernie almost won. That's why
yeah.
Trump won.
Well, Dave Chappelle has a skit on that, and he calls him the honest liar. And he says, up on the stage was Trump on one side and Hillary on the other, and Trump starts screaming, "The system is rigged. The system is rigged." And the moderator said, "Well, if it's rigged, how do you know it's rigged?" He says, "I know it's rigged because I use it." And he goes, and Dave Chappelle says, right then, the American people saw an honest liar. He says, "I know it's rigged because I use it. And if you want me to not use it and make the system better, then Hillary, you need to change the system, but you won't change it because you and your donors use it too." And Dave Chappelle says right then Trump was born and projected to the presidency, because the American people went, "Holy shit, that's right. That's exactly right. We know it's rigged. We've said it's rigged, and he just proved it to us."
He just admitted it, and he
Yeah,
knew it too. I mean, it's like people when they try to get him on his taxes, and people were all ranting like, "Can you believe he didn't pay his tax in 5 years?" When that got leaked, it was like, oh, so everyone else, you just willfully don't try to find every deduction that you can find. Like you
yeah.
don't. Do you just write over whatever check says, or do you go through and try to itemize and do everything? Oh yeah, you do. Oh, you try to grab up every receipt of every donation you made. Yeah, you know why? Because you don't want to pay taxes. Well, the guy lost so much money in his businesses, he can write it off. Didn't make the tax code, didn't cheat the tax code, just use the tax code.
If he did
Right.
something illegal, charge him with it. But you can't
Right.
charge him because he didn't do anything illegal.
Right. He just did what the taxes were. Guess what? What
Exactly.
every red-blooded American who pays
Yeah.
taxes, because the
Yeah.
majority don't, does too, to make sure they pay as little as possible and can keep their own
100%.
money,
Yep.
without it being wasted like this administration and every administration wasted all around the globe and not
Yep.
on our own people. So I mean, yeah, they've trying to throw all that at him. It didn't work. Um, and that's what's going to be interesting about this one, right? This campaign season. And today is going to throw it way off of of everything else. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I mean, I think the American people also, just like I said, they real they wanted someone from outside DC, and neither the left or right never heard it, and that's why they couldn't understand how Trump won. It's like, duh, you're lucky, Obama won, but if you would have paid attention to how he got elected, you would know why Trump won.
Right.
But the American people are going to look at this, and there's really, I mean, what else could the left say that Trump has done to get them to change their? I mean, not only have they tried to impeach him twice, and they accused him all of Russia stuff, and all that stuff was disproven, and all that kind of stuff, and the P dossier and all that. But now you've got all these charges, and you got the one in Georgia sleeping with the prosecutor. You got they're trying to charge him for documents when they're letting Biden off, and blah 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 blah. I mean, if that's not distracting, the American people are going, are you just going to keep making up things and saying like we don't, like no one's going to buy it? They burned every card they had. They've tried everything they can. The American people aren't going to sign up for continued action. He could literally freaking be sleeping with Putin, for God. Him and Putin could be in bed together. They won't be able to bring charges because the American people won't believe it. I mean, you talk about crying wolf.
Yeah.
The last 8 years or 7 years has been nothing but crying wolf. And no one's listening to the little boy anymore. The little boy being the left. They're like,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and
Well, there's
it's
been
like,
a lot of speculation that Biden's not going to be the nominee anyway. Now, I the later we get in the game, I think the more you're going to piss off the left voters if you remove him, right? So it's like pulling the blanket out or pulling the rug out from underneath you, right? So,
well,
but
there's speculation, right? Michelle, Newsom,
Michelle,
like,
Newsom, yeah. And so, will this latest gaffe, this latest report, will this speed that process up? We don't know. Maybe the next poll comes out and the American people go, "Yeah, we've been saying for a while, he can't remember shit. He's an old man. He's a puppet. He's not, and his numbers may tank even worse than they are, and they may go, "Okay, we've seen enough. We need to get our new person in there so that we can start building them up and start getting towards the next,
can they do
you
that
know."
in 9 months or 8 months? I mean, 8, 9. I mean, I mean, how
Well,
can they
if he does it
pivot?
gracefully, and if they convince him to say, "Okay, go out and tell the American people for health reasons you're stepping down," right? Then they get the sympathy, and they say, "Our nominee is going to be this person." Now that's going to piss off.
The problem is, and I'm thinking, is the people behind him that are really running this country. They want him there because the puppets, they like pulling the strings are still attached,
Yep.
right? If they put someone in, let's say they try to put Newsom forward, right? I don't think Michelle's an option. Let's say try to put Newsom forward. He's not going to let them pull his strings unless they got something on him, right? He's not going to let that stuff out. He's going to make his own decisions. And
I think he will, because I think despite him being a good speaker, I think he's dumb as shit. He is not an intelligent person. He is dumb. He has handlers, and just like Biden, and he is dumber than a post.
the one thing
He
is he does not have name recognition because, I mean, outside of California and a few people, like no one knows who he is. I mean, he does not have the national stage. He tries to. He tried to go around and that kind of stuff, but he doesn't have the national name recognition and just awareness by the people of who he is.
Well, and
Um,
and just like New York, people see the state of California. They see that the
yeah.
state is handing out, the red carpet to people that are there illegally, while the homeless population explodes. They see that the businesses leaving California. They see their jobs leaving California. They see the rolling blackouts. They see the push for electric vehicles and then turning off people's electricity. You can't continue down that and expect
Now,
this guy to
not
win.
to mention, before he was the governor, he was the mayor of San Francisco, and we can just
Yeah,
look at that, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so I don't know. I would imagine the left. I was telling my wife this earlier. We were watching the Biden talk. I was like, right after he got done, I'm like, there's got to be a lot of people at the head of the Democratic Party and the DNC that are burning up phones tonight.
Oh yeah.
Like they have got to be panicking at what their next step is. Can we control Kamala? Could we put a 25th Amendment in place? Do we pull that trigger? Because they're the ones that are going to make that decision, right? And
Yeah.
can we control her and control her damage control, because she just has to open her mouth and she just, or
I think I think you could control Kamala for a little bit. She would be so excited to be the first woman president. She'd be so excited to, be a minority. You could control her for a little bit, and then her ego and
they
her
know they
mouth
can't
would
have her.
override it.
The problem is, unless they're not going to get her, like, if he were to step aside or they did 25th Amendment, then would she be the top of the ticket? They're not going to get those votes for her. I mean,
No,
they
no.
people hate her worse than Joe. They're done. They might as well just not even run anybody and just
Yeah,
like give the keys to Trump and say, here you go, move on in. I
yeah. They'll,
mean,
they'll have
because
to.
they're
They'll
not
have
going to
to.
get.
They'll have to lie their way out of that one. They have to come up with an excuse as
And
to
I mean,
why she.
how does she get put into president and because of the 25th or whatever? And then they're going to try to put Newsom up or put someone else up, right?
Yeah,
Jeffries or somebody. Like, well, wait, she's your president now. Why wouldn't you not be supporting her?
yeah,
She's the head
yeah,
of the. I mean, it's like they like I say they got to be burning some phones up tonight.
yeah.
They've got to be panicking on
Oh, absolutely.
on.
But I mean, like I said earlier, they can simply assassinate Trump, and then all their problems are solved. They don't have to worry about anything. They could continue with Biden. They could continue with Kamala. They could
Just
continue
to
with
make safe,
anybody.
just to be safe. Rob is just saying that may be a
I'm
technique
not.
within
Yeah,
the. That's
I'm not. No, I am not
nothing like
saying do
that.
that.
Yeah,
No,
if they
no,
somehow
absolutely
removed
not.
if they
Yeah,
removed Trump, whether
yeah,
charged him or something,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Um, but then it would be, yeah. I mean, the right would have the same problem. If somehow Trump dropped out of the race, got removed from the race, or whatever, could they pivot and replace him with someone that could win in 9 months? And if so, who would that be?
It'd
Right?
have to be DeSantis. Would
Um,
be the only person. They can pull DeSantis back in.
they
He
could
has.
because he dropped and supported him,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep.
They wouldn't pivot to hate Nikki,
No,
but
no.
they could go to the Santis with the Vivek Ramaswamy VP.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, they could do that, but um,
Or a Byron Scott VP. You'd have two Floridans, two people from Florida. So do you know who
yeah,
Byron Scott is?
yeah,
Yeah, he's a
I've heard the name.
firecracker.
Yeah, yeah.
And my favorite line from him
I
was
mean,
someone.
Tim Scott's an option too.
Yeah.
Tim Scott's an option too.
So some reporter asked Byron Scott something, and he looked at him and says, "I'm 6'2" and 265 pounds. I'm not scared of anybody."
Yeah, Florida's got. I like the Florida sheriffs. The Marion County sheriff and Polk County
Yeah,
sheriffs. Those guys are the ones that they're funnier than any
yeah,
Southwest flight attendant, which are pretty funny. But
yeah,
yeah, no, it'd be interesting. So we had this thing today from the Supreme Court. I guess they're meeting again on the 16th. There'll be a lot of speculation what comes out of their ruling. I mean, and I think I know what they have to do. They can't say Colorado can do this because they're going to open up a Pandora's box and
yeah,
destroy how this country was founded to have elections. They almost have no choice.
yeah,
There's no harm, no foul letting the American people. The American people are worried that he was responsible for January 6th and caused all that. Then they can vote that, right. That you don't take that ability from them to vote away. They can write someone whatever they want to do.
yeah,
Um, I think the biggest, which was crazy, like I said, but we thought that was the biggest news of the day, and then this happened with this report coming out. So the talking heads are going to be going for day after day for the next few days about this and speculating and all that kind of stuff. But I do want to take a moment too and just recognize before we're about to drop off here, uh, just to remind the American people that our men and women out there in uniform, both in your civilian community and law enforcement and firefighters and our military are always out there sacrificing for you. And fortunately, we lost 5 young Marine souls yesterday with the CH-53 crash in California on a training flight. Um, our soldiers don't have to be, they don't have to be in combat zones like the poor young 3 Georgia reservists
yeah,
that were killed over in Jordan, last week or week 4. I guess it was last week, right? They could be doing a training flight, making sure they hone their skills, and just bad things happen sometimes, and for whatever reason, and
yeah.
hearts go out to those families of those 5 Marines who crashed into the mountains and just went out in a regular training flight that day and thought they'd be back, and you just don't know what's going to happen to you, but it's our men and women continue to stand up and step up for this flag every day.
Yep. And this right, right after Toby Keith, who had big supporter of the troops. So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I will leave on a positive note, and that is the RNC chair that's being reported that Rona McDaniel will be stepping down. So she has
yeah.
done nothing but deliver losses, and she is part of the reason why the Republican Party has been trounced in the last three elections. It's all on her shoulders, hers and some of
Now
the establishment.
Is she Mitch Romney's daughter?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because it's Rona Romney McDaniel. It's like she's a Romney. I thought
Probably
she was his
then,
daughter.
yeah.
Yeah,
So, but she is the reason why the Republican Party. She's part of it. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
she's not the only reason, but I think the establishment, the McConnells, like one of the gentlemen we've had on the show before, Joe Collins. He's come out and shown proof that the Republican Party came to him and said, "Look, we need your information for all your supporters and stuff like that, for the RNC." And so he handed it over, and then McConnell denied any kind of funding for him to run against Maxine Waters.
yeah, yeah. I
No
remember that.
funding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were
So
talking about
yeah, so the McConnells of the world and the Rona McDaniels and stuff like that are part of the
and the
reason
Lindsey
why
Grahams and
the
all
Lindsey
them. Yes,
Grahams,
they
the
need to go.
zealots, yeah, the
By the way,
zealots out there,
thanks to a good friend who's listening. She's Mitt Romney's niece. Mitt
niece.
Romney's niece. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I knew somehow.
Nepotism runs deep in Washington.
Yep,
So
yep. But
yeah,
no, that's going to be good news. And the reports are President Trump wanted her replaced, and she's stepping down being
yeah,
replaced. So,
yeah,
um, yeah. And if anyone's thinking like, hey, why are you guys hammering on Nikki Haley and all that kind of stuff? I mean, I don't know. She lost to nobody. The Nevada primary, she lost to the selection of nobody on this list.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so that's how
Well, and
low she's liked.
her stances on, I mean, she came out and said that she doesn't believe in anonymity on social media. She doesn't believe in that. She thinks everybody's information should be out there. She's a zealot. She wants to continue the industrial complex for war. She's not somebody the American people want. Yes, we want strength, but I think after 20 plus years at war, the American people are tired.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's I really liked her, and I was a big fan of hers at the start. But she has said some things that just make me kind of cringe a little bit, and it's been unfortunate because I thought she was going to be a real rising star, but yeah, I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, she
So,
did lose.
so
Nobody.
one last question for you: who do you think Trump is going to choose as a?
Oh, are you locked up? Are you there?
No, you
Oh, there
froze.
you
Yeah, I'm
are.
here.
Oh, you're broken.
Yeah,
Who do I think Trump's going to pick as a VP pick?
yeah. Who do you
Uh,
think he's going to pick, and who do you want him to pick?
I think he's going to choose between, as he said, Christine Noem, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Tim Scott.
Okay.
Um, I mean, we have to call it like it is, right? A president, everyone knows this, pays attention to politics. A president picks a VP that helps him pull across the other votes across the line.
Yeah.
And Sally, in the world of today's day of identity politics, it's going to have to be a minority of some kind. Um, and I mean, all of them are very capable. I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders would be a great pick. Myself, I know she's from your state, but I think she'd be a great pick. She comes from good loins. Tim Scott's a great guy. Uh, I don't see him picking Vivek. He's not going to pick. I don't think he's going to pick DeSantis. But who knows? Yeah, I don't know. But I think Christie, her, or Tim Scott could all be strong options.
Yeah, as I
So,
mentioned before, Byron Donalds, I'm a big fan of his.
yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard, I think would be a good
I think
choice.
Tulsi would be great. Yes, I
I
would
think
like to
Tulsi would
see
be a really
Tulsi.
good.
Yeah,
She's a very centrist person.
she would
I
pull
think
a lot of she'd pull a lot of
a
independents.
lot,
Yes, yeah,
a
that's a good
lot.
choice, and she
Yeah,
checks a lot of blocks. Minority,
a
veteran,
lot.
right?
Yep,
All that kind
yep,
of stuff. So,
yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, we got to wrap it up before we hit the hour mark. We're at 59 minutes and set counting down. Want to thank everyone for coming on. Don't forget our sponsors, Red Rum Sport Fishing, our boy Toby, boohammer.com, Gears for Grunts, and Alpha Elite Performance, where I'm a true believer and user of Alpha Elite products. Make sure you check them out. Alpha Elite, I think Elite 15 gets you 15% off. Thank you so much, Rob, for coming on and joining me tonight, man, on a very, very packed news day.
Yes, sir.
So we'll see everyone hopefully next week. Keep an eye for some bald man rants. I got some of them I'm spinning up maybe over the weekend. And I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Rob, so much. Everybody have a good night.